In a peaceful mountain village on Earth, surrounded by green hills and soft winds, lived a woman named Mina. She was not rich or famous. She lived in a small clay house and spent her mornings collecting herbs from the forest. Mina sold those herbs in the village market. Everyone knew her as a kind and quiet woman who smiled more than she spoke. The village was old-fashioned. There were no big machines, no flying cars, and no towers made of glass. People still used firewood to cook and rainwater to drink. Many from the city said this place was too simple, but for Mina, it was full of life. One morning, something unusual happened. As Mina set up her small stall in the market square, a group of strangers arrived. Their clothes were silver and smooth, their eyes strange and glowing. Their skin had different colors, some blue, some gray, and one had shimmering scales. They were not from Earth. These were off-world researchers, aliens who studied humans from faraway planets. Their leader, Drezel, was tall and proud. His voice was deep and his tone was sharp. He looked around the market with a small smirk on his face. "What a simple world," he said to his team. "This is perfect for our report. No machines, no science, no real thinking." The team laughed softly, except for one young assistant named Nomi, who seemed curious rather than amused. They walked from stall to stall, watching how villagers made things with their hands. When they reached Mina's stall, she was arranging bundles of mint and wild ginger. She looked up and greeted them with a warm smile. "Would you like something for your throat?" "You sound dry," she said gently. Drezel laughed. "No, thank you, but maybe you can help me with something more advanced." He pulled out a small glowing tablet from his coat. The screen showed a long line of alien symbols, numbers, and patterns that even some galactic scholars found difficult. It was a math problem, a high-level cosmic energy equation. Drezel had once failed to solve it during his training. He held it out toward Mina. "Here," he said with a playful grin. "Try solving this. It's just a little joke." His team chuckled behind him. They expected confusion, or at best, a funny guess. Mina looked at the screen. Her eyes moved slowly, following the curves and angles. She didn't panic. She didn't laugh. She took a moment, then looked down at the ground. She picked up a stick and moved away from her stall to a patch of soft dirt. With quiet grace, she began to draw. Her hand was steady, her face calm. Line after line, symbol after symbol, she copied the equation onto the ground. Then she started adding to it, changing some parts, rearranging others. The aliens stopped laughing. She worked in silence for about 10 minutes. People from the village started gathering, watching with interest but not fully understanding what was happening. To them, it looked like art, flowing lines and shapes in the dirt. Finally, Mina stood up and gently placed the stick aside. "There," she said, "that should fix the mistake in the third line. And this here," she pointed, "helps balance the energy between the fifth and sixth symbols. Otherwise, the whole pattern falls apart." Drezel stared at the ground. He bent down, checked each symbol, then pulled out his tablet and compared. His smile faded. He tapped on the screen to run a check. A red warning light flashed, not because she was wrong, but because the system could not process the new structure she had introduced. "What is this variable?" he asked, pointing at a symbol she had drawn near the center. "Oh," Mina said, brushing her hands. "It's like a rhythm. Something that flows in circles, like seasons or breath. You didn't have it in your question, but I felt it was missing." The tablet dinged softly. A green light. Her version passed. In fact, it outperformed the original question. Nomi, the young assistant, stepped forward. "Sir, I think she just solved the unresolved equation from the Helios project," she whispered. "And she added a new variable we've never seen." Drezel stood slowly, his face pale. "That's not possible," he said. "She's a herbalist, a village woman." But Mina had already gone back to her stall. She was now helping an old man pick the right herbs for a stomachache. The crowd began to whisper. Not just villagers, but the alien crew. Word moved fast. A simple woman had done what top minds could not. And she did it with the calm of someone picking flowers. Dressel cleared his throat. "Bring her to the ship," he ordered his team. "Tell her she's won a gift." Mina looked at the team approaching her. She wasn't scared. She wasn't even surprised. "Is this about the numbers?" she asked gently. They nodded. Mina wiped her hands and nodded in return. "All right, but I must be back before evening. I need to boil some roots for my neighbor." As she stepped toward the sleek alien shuttle waiting near the hill, no one knew that the woman walking away, barefoot and humble, had just taken the first step in changing the fate of the galaxy. Mina sat quietly inside the alien shuttle, her eyes calmly looking out the window as green hills slowly disappeared below. The inside of the ship was smooth and silver, with strange lights blinking on the walls. To her, it felt like riding inside. A hollow stone that floated in the sky. Across from her sat Nomi, the young alien assistant. She had soft green skin and large eyes that blinked slowly. Unlike the others, Nomi didn't look proud or confused. She looked curious. "You're very calm," Nomi said softly. Mina smiled. "Is there a reason I shouldn't be?" Nomi tilted her head. "Most people would be nervous." Mina looked at her hands. "I have boiled roots in more dangerous pots than this." The shuttle rose higher and passed through the clouds. After a few minutes, a large ship came into view above the sky, like a giant silver bird sleeping in the stars. The shuttle connected with it, and the door slid open with a soft hiss. Dressel stood there waiting. His arms were crossed, and his face looked serious. "This is the research vessel Tronora," he said. "We study cosmic mathematics and universal patterns. You will now face real tests." Mina nodded politely. "I will try my best." They walked through bright, shining halls filled with glass walls and glowing symbols. Alien researchers from many planets watched her with raised eyebrows. Some whispered. Some laughed quietly. A few just stared. "She's the one?" One of them asked. "She solved the Helios equation?" Another said. "By drawing in the dirt?" Mina heard them all, but she stayed quiet. Her eyes followed the floor's glowing lines as if they were guiding her. Finally, they reached a wide room with curved walls and floating screens. In the center was a round platform. "Please step onto the logic field," Dressel said. "Let's begin the first test." Mina stepped forward. The lights changed. A screen appeared in front of her, filled with symbols and spinning shapes. This puzzle involved energy flow in a black hole, a level of thinking that even the best minds struggled to understand. Mina stared at it, but instead of using the controls, she closed her eyes. After a moment, she opened them and began speaking. Softly, "The shape here is pulling too much from one side. It's like when rain flows only down one hill and the other side stays dry. You must even the pull shift this line and let the spin breathe." As she spoke, the shapes moved, as if her words touched them. The machine confirmed her answer. "Correct," said the system in a robotic voice. The room fell silent. Another test appeared. A language puzzle, filled with dead codes from forgotten worlds. Mina tilted her head. "Some of these symbols remind me of bird songs I've heard near the river." She began to hum softly, and then rearranged the words to follow the pattern of a river's current. The system beeped again. "Correct." One by one, puzzles came. Time loop sequences, gravity, folds, energy balance sheets. And one by one, Mina solved them. She used images from nature, rivers, seeds, winds, and stars, to understand them. Dressel watched with tight lips. This was not what he expected. He had brought her here to prove she got lucky. But now, even the ship's central brain was confirming her answers. "This isn't normal," he muttered. Nomi, standing nearby, whispered, "Maybe it's time we stop thinking she's normal." By the time Mina finished the 6th challenge, the room was full. Researchers had gathered silently, watching this woman with her plain clothes and soft voice teach their smartest system something new. Drezel stepped forward. He wasn't ready to give up. "One last test," he said firmly. "The spiral collapse simulation." Nomi turned to him, alarmed. "But sir, that simulation hasn't been solved. It was made to push the limits of alien minds." Drezel nodded. "Exactly. If she is as brilliant as everyone thinks, she can try it." Mina didn't argue. She simply nodded. The room darkened. The floor changed. Around her, stars and galaxies appeared, not real, but a perfect virtual copy. One large spiral galaxy in the center began to break apart, twisting violently and pulling itself in all directions. It was chaos. Stars collided, time bent, and space crumbled. "This is what happens when energy loss becomes too fast," Nomi whispered. "No one has stopped it yet." Mina stood still for a long time. She looked at the spinning stars, the broken rhythm, the cracking pattern. Then slowly, she raised both hands and began to move them gently, like she was shaping something in the air. "Everything here is fighting," she said quietly. "But maybe they don't need to fight." She closed her eyes and spoke as if she was telling a bedtime story. "There was once a forest that began to burn. The trees panicked and dropped their leaves. The wind screamed and the ground shook. But one tree stayed calm. It spread its roots deeper, holding the soil, and slowly the fire lost its hunger." As she spoke, the galaxy in the simulation began to slow. The light softened, the spiral reformed. The room was silent. Not a whisper, not a sound. The galaxy stabilized. The simulation had never done that before. The system's voice rang out. "Solution found. New energy pathway detected." Drezel looked pale. His pride, his plan, everything had failed. Nomi stepped forward, her eyes wide. "She didn't just solve it. She changed how it works." Mina turned and looked at them all. "I only listened," she said. "Even fire and wind can tell stories if you learn how to hear them." The room remained silent, not in disbelief, but in awe. Far above, in a hidden satellite, a message was sent to the Galactic Science Council. It read, "We may have just met the greatest mind in the galaxy, and she doesn't even know what gravity equations are called." The ship Trinora floated quietly above Earth, but inside, a storm of questions had started. Who was this woman? How did she solve problems meant for the highest alien minds? And what exactly was the new pattern she added? Mina sat peacefully in a room made of silver glass. A tray of warm broth and fruit lay untouched beside her. She was looking at a screen that showed a spiral pattern, the same one she had just fixed in the simulation. To her, it looked like a flower opening under sunlight. Outside the room, Drezel paced back and forth. His face was tight with anger, but his eyes were filled with confusion. He had expected her to fail. He had brought her to the ship as a joke. But now, the entire ship was talking about Mina. She must be hiding something. Drezel said to Nomi, "Maybe she was trained in secret. Or maybe she's using tricks." Nomi looked calm but firm. "Or maybe she sees the world differently than we do." Drezel didn't answer. He tapped his wrist screen and called the lab technician. "Prepare the mindfold simulation," he said. "We'll see what happens when she faces a puzzle that changes every second." A few hours later, Mina was taken to a new lab. The room was large and empty, with smooth walls and a soft light that seemed to come from everywhere. In the center stood a tall chair, shaped like a flower petal. Around it floated dozens of glowing screens. "This test is called the Mindfold," said the technician. "The puzzle inside will shift every few seconds. Nothing will stay the same. It is designed to break logical patterns, No one has passed it. Mina looked at the chair and smiled gently. It looks like a lotus. Shall I sit? They nodded as she settled into the seat. The lights dimmed. Her fingers touched the sides of the chair. Instantly, the simulation began. She was no longer in the room. She was inside a swirling world of changing shapes, numbers, colors, and sounds. The puzzle had no clear question. One moment it was spinning lights, the next it was frozen cubes. Then it became flowing rivers that broke apart. The system was testing her mind's ability to adapt, to survive confusion and chaos. But Mina didn't panic. She closed her eyes and listened. She didn't chase the puzzle. She let it come to her. She treated the strange symbols like falling leaves in the wind, not problems to be solved, but movements to be understood. Outside the simulation, Nomi watched the screens with wide eyes. Her brainwaves are steady, she whispered. She's not resisting the puzzle. She's dancing with it. Drezel crossed his arms. This makes no sense. How can someone with no formal learning control, a simulation made to shatter logic? Minutes passed. Then the system beeped 3 times. A message appeared on the central screen. User has completed simulation. New solution path created. Mindfold puzzle stabilized. Gasps filled the lab. Even the ship's AI system paused for a moment before saying, "No previous user has reached this stage." New pattern detected. Later that evening, Mina was asked to join a private meeting in the observation hall. It was a quiet space with large windows showing stars outside. A few scientists stood there, including Nomi, Drezel, and a silver-skinned elder named Vareen, who was a respected figure in galactic science. Vareen stepped forward. His voice was slow but full of power. "Mina," he said, "do you know what you've done?" She looked at the stars and then at him. I answered what I could. I only tried to listen to what the shapes were saying. Varun nodded slowly. The things you solve today have troubled our minds for centuries. Some of these puzzles were meant for artificial brains, not living minds. Yet you solved them, not with fear, but with peace. Mina sat down near the window. When I was young, I would sit by the river for hours. The water spoke in patterns. The wind passed messages through leaves. I did not always understand them, but I learned how to feel their rhythm. Nomi sat beside her. You don't use numbers the way we do, but you still find answers. It's like your mind sees the world as a story. Yes, Mina said. Everything is part of a story. Even fire has a reason to burn. It's not always war. Sometimes it's just making room for new life. Varun looked at Drezel. This woman may not use the tools we know, he said. But she holds a gift that we don't, the ability to connect knowledge to feeling and logic to life. Drezel stayed quiet. Mina turned to him. Her voice was soft but firm. You wanted me to fail. That's all right. Sometimes people test others because they are afraid, but fear doesn't need to lead us. We can choose wonder instead. Those words echoed in the room. Outside, the stars continued their slow dance across the window. And for the first time, the people on board Trinora began to see Mina not as a joke, not as a mystery, but as a teacher. She had no degree, no spaceship, no machine. But she had something greater, a mind connected to the heartbeat of the universe. The next morning, the ship Trinora floated quietly above the earth, but inside, it was no longer quiet. Messages from other ships, science stations, and learning centers across the galaxy were flooding in. News had spread fast. A simple woman from a small village had solved problems that machines and scholars couldn't. Some believed it. Others refused to believe, but no one ignored it. In a deep chamber on the ship, Mina sat before a curved screen. It displayed flowing lights and shapes that looked like stars being born and dying. The ship's senior scientists wanted to show her a riddle that had confused them for generations. The life code equation. It was a pattern of numbers and energies, believed to be connected to the way life started in the universe. Many had tried to solve it. All had failed. Varun, the elder scientist, explained it to Mina gently. We call this the root equation of creation. It has been studied for centuries. Some think it holds the secret of why life exists at all. Mina listened carefully. Then she asked, why is it called an equation if it does not end anywhere? The scientists looked at each other. They had never thought about it that way. Drezel, standing in the corner, folded his arms. This problem is far too deep. Even we haven't made progress. But Mina was not afraid. She stood and walked closer to the screen. She watched the flowing shapes like someone watching the clouds. Then she said, this looks like a breath. Varun raised an eyebrow. A breath? Yes, she said. Inhale, pause, exhale, then stillness, then again. This pattern moves like that. She raised her hand slowly and traced a line through the air. Where it breaks, she said, is where fear entered the flow. If you remove the fear, it moves again. The scientist stared. Nomi walked forward and quickly entered Mina's idea into the system. The equation shifted. At first, nothing happened. Then a new light appeared, a bright, green line that curved softly through the center of the pattern. The ship's system paused. Then it spoke. Unknown solution accepted. Energy thread balanced. Potential for biological replication increased. By 28%. Gasps filled the room. Nomi stepped back stunned. She improved the core energy cycle. That could change how we build healing systems, even how we grow food. Mina didn't say much. She simply sat down again and looked. Calm, as if she had only watered a plant. Drezel, however, was not calm. He stepped forward quickly. Enough of this, he said. We need to test her under pressure. Real science requires more than soft stories and guesses. Varun looked at him. You're still trying to prove she is wrong. I'm trying. To protect our work, Drezel replied. This is not magic. It's logic. Mina turned her head gently toward him. And what if logic and life are not enemies? Drezel said nothing. Later that day, a new message arrived from the Galactic Science Council. They had heard about Mina and her solutions. They were sending a transport to bring her to the Grand Hall of Minds, a place where the best thinkers of the galaxy met only once every 100 years. The council wanted to speak with her. They wanted to learn from her. When Nomi gave Mina the message, Mina looked surprised. I'm only a village woman, she said. Nomi shook her head. No, you are a mirror. When you look at a problem, it sees itself clearly. Mina smiled. Softly, I will go, but I must return soon. My village has many herbs to dry. As the galactic transport ship approached, Drezel made one final attempt to protect his pride. He went into the ship's private system and opened a dangerous simulation called the Spiral Rift. It was not a puzzle. It was a trap. It was designed to overload a person's thoughts with thousands of changes every second. If she's truly what they say, he whispered to himself, she will survive this. But Mina was already one step ahead. She entered the simulation as requested. As soon as the spinning lights and crashing forces surrounded her, she did not try to stop them. She closed her eyes and whispered a story to herself. She imagined a garden in a storm. Rain fell hard, winds broke branches, and soil turned to mud. But deep under the earth, seeds were still safe, quiet, waiting. That thought became her anchor. Within the simulation, her mind found the still point, the seed, and let the chaos move around it. The system, expecting her to panic, began to slow. Lights calmed. Sounds faded. In just 7 minutes, the Spiral Rift simulation stabilized. The ship's AI responded. User has created a safe center with an unstable field. No damage detected. New coping method recorded. When Mina returned to the real world, Drizzle stood there, stunned. He had no words. Mina walked past him gently. She stopped and said, "A seed grows best in silence. Maybe you need to grow something new inside." He didn't answer. That evening, Mina stood on the observation deck once more, watching stars shine like tiny campfires across the sky. Nomi stood beside her. "You've done what no one expected," Nomi said. "I didn't do anything big," Mina replied. "I just listened." "To what?" Nomi asked. "To everything," Mina said with a soft smile. "To the stars, the wind, the numbers, and the fear behind them." Then the stars reflected in her calm eyes, and the galaxy waited, not to teach, but to learn from a woman who saw the universe not as a machine, but as a living story. The transport ship from the Galactic Science Council arrived the next morning. It was larger than any ship Mina had seen before, shaped like a floating mountain, with soft golden lights shining across its surface. When it landed beside Trinora, the air around it turned silent, as if even the wind was watching. 3 council members stepped out, one with silver skin and gentle eyes, one with a glowing headpiece shaped like a ring of fire, and one who looked completely made of light. They had come for MEENA. Inside the ship's gathering room, the council spoke to her with deep respect. The leader, a tall being named Gerald, looked into Mina's eyes and said, "You are not a normal human. We believe you are something new." Mina smiled kindly. "I'm not new. I am only quiet. Maybe that's what makes me different." Gerald continued, "We want to take you to the Grand Hall of Minds. It is a place where ideas shape the future of galaxies. We believe you belong there." Before answering, Mina looked out the ship window. Earth was below, soft and green, with rivers like threads of silver and clouds like cotton. Her village was a tiny dot among the trees. "I will come," she said gently. "But I will return to my village. I am not meant to stay away forever." Gerald nodded. "Of course. You are free to leave whenever you wish." The journey to the Grand Hall took only hours, though it was many light years away. Their ship moved through silent space at speeds faster than thought. As they traveled, Mina sat near a window, watching stars pass like drifting fireflies. She didn't speak much, but her mind was awake, thinking about everything she had seen and everything she had yet to see. Beside her, Nomi whispered, "You're changing everything, Mina." "I don't want to change," Mina replied softly. "I only want people to listen more, not just to machines, but to the world around them." When they reached the Grand Hall of Minds, Mina stepped into a place unlike anything she had imagined. The hall was made of clear crystal, floating in deep space. Inside were thousands of beings, scientists, thinkers, machines, and life forms made of sound or energy. All had come to hear Mina speak. Some did not believe the reports. Others were curious. But all watched in silence as the woman from Earth, wearing simple clothes and no jewelry, stood at the center of the stage. Gerald introduced her. "This is Mina of Earth. She sees patterns in ways no one else does. Today we ask her to show us what we may have missed." There was no microphone, no screen, just a round platform and Mina standing calmly under a sky of stars. She began to speak. "When I was a child," she said, "I watched ants carry leaves 10 times their size. They never spoke, but they worked in perfect order. I asked my mother, 'How do they know what to do?' She said, 'Because they feel the balance.'" The crowd listened closely. "I did not study in your schools," Mina said, "but I studied the rain. I watched how birds fly together. I saw how fire dances in a circle when you feed it slowly. These are all equations, you just don't call them that." Some scientists looked confused. Others began nodding slowly. Mina continued, "You build machines to explore stars. But what about the things that grow between your feet? What about the rhythm in your breath, or the silence between thoughts. There are answers there too. Then she bent down and drew a spiral on the stage floor with her finger. This shape, she said, is in galaxies, in snail shells, in water moving down a drain. It's everywhere. But it's not just a design, it's a story. Beginning, growing, pausing, and returning. The hall was completely silent. She stood up and said, "If you truly want to understand the universe, don't just measure it. Feel it, don't just break it apart. Listen to how it holds itself together." When she finished, no one clapped. Not because they weren't impressed, but because they were deeply moved. Many had spent lifetimes chasing logic and numbers. But Mina had reminded them that behind every number was life, and behind life was connection. Later, in a private meeting, the council asked Mina a final question. "We want to make you a permanent member of this hall," said Jarrell. "You will be given any technology you wish, any knowledge we have. You can travel across the stars. Will you accept?" Mina was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I am grateful. But I do not need all of that. I only wish for one thing." "What is it?" asked Nomi. Mina smiled. "Let me speak in my way. Let me tell stories. Let me teach through pictures, seasons, and silence. I may not use formulas, but I know how to show the truth." Gerald looked at the others. Then he nodded. "You may teach however you choose," he said. "The galaxy is ready to listen." Back on Earth, in Mina's small village, things had not changed. The river still flowed. Birds still sang in the morning. Children still chased goats across the fields. But far above, in orbit, were satellites now carrying Mina's patterns and teachings. Her simple stories were being studied in places she had never seen. On planets with red skies, blue oceans, and golden grass, young students were learning the equations of breath, balance, and stillness. They called it the Mina method, not a science, not a religion, but a way of seeing. And Mina, the simple woman from Earth, had become a mirror in which the universe saw its own beauty more clearly. Mina returned to her village just as she had promised. The same narrow path led her home. The same soft wind passed through the trees. The smell of warm soil, fresh herbs, and evening smoke filled the air. Her small clay house stood waiting for her, peaceful and unchanged. Children ran to greet her, smiling. Old neighbors waved. No one asked about galaxies or councils. They only asked, "Will you make the healing tea again?" Or, "Will you tell us a story tonight?" And Mina smiled, because this was where her belonged. But even though her village had stayed the same, the world above it had not. Across the galaxy, her name was now spoken with deep respect. In learning centers on distant moons, students drew spirals in the sand to understand balance. On water planets, scientists copied her rhythm patterns to build wave energy systems. In healing centers, her quiet teachings were used to treat minds lost in stress and speed. They called her the silent mathematician, and what shocked everyone the most, she had done it all without using long formulas, without complex machines, and without pride. She had used only the wisdom of nature, the silence of her thoughts, and the calm of her heart. The Galactic Science Council decided something new. For the first time in history, a human would be added to the circle of universal advisors, a group that guided science, ethics, and development across all worlds. But this time, the advisors agreed. Mina must not be changed. She must not be forced to speak their way. They would learn from her way instead. On the day of the official ceremony, a message was sent to Mina's village. A small ship landed near the forest edge. Nomi stepped out, her face bright with joy. "We are here to take you to the circle." Nomi said, "They want your guidance. They are ready to listen." Mina looked up from her herb basket. She had been sorting dry leaves. "Will I be allowed to speak as I always do?" She asked. "Yes," Nomi said. "You can tell stories, draw in the dirt, or just sit in silence, whatever feels right to you." Mina nodded. "Then I will come." At the council hall, all the advisors gathered. Some were beings made of light. Others were machines with thinking minds. And some were species so old their bodies moved like clouds. They had met for hundreds of years. But never before had they sat to listen to someone like Mina. Drezel was also there. Since their last meeting, something had changed in him. He no longer looked proud or cold. He stood quietly now, watching Mina with thoughtful eyes. As Mina entered the hall, no grand music played, no crown was given. She simply sat down on a smooth stone seat in the center of the circle. One advisor asked, "What do you think we should do about the rising energy loss across the outer zones?" Another asked, "How can we prevent overuse of technology from breaking the balance of natural worlds?" Mina listened carefully. Then she said, "Too much of anything creates sickness, even light, even speed. When a tree grows too fast, it breaks. When the river runs too strong, it floods. You must give time to breathe between growth." The Fae advisors were quiet. Some closed their eyes, some made notes. Even the machine minds paused for a moment, as if thinking deeply. Drezel finally spoke. "Mina," he said softly, "when I first met you, I laughed at your ways. I thought numbers and machines were the only path to truth. But I was wrong." She looked at him kindly. "It is not wrong to use numbers. It is only wrong to forget the life behind them." Drezel lowered his head. "Thank you." From that day forward, Mina was no longer seen as just a villager. She became something more, a symbol of humble wisdom. Across thousands of worlds, people started to pause and listen again, to the wind, to silence, to the small stories hidden in nature. And something beautiful began to happen. Farms started using her patterns to grow food without harming the land. Space engineers began designing ships that moved like waves, saving more energy. Even in busy cities across planets, people painted spirals on their walls to remember Mina's teachings. Her ideas were not just helpful, they were healing. One day, as she returned from a long meeting at the circle, Nomi walked beside her. "You've done more than solve equations," Nomi said. "You've changed how we think. You've reminded us that intelligence doesn't always speak loudly." Mina smiled. "Wisdom is like water. It doesn't shout, but it reaches everything." They looked up at the stars together. Nomi asked, "Do you think more people like you exist? People with deep understanding but no titles?" "Oh yes." Mina said, "Every village has a silent mind. Every forest hides an answer. We just forget to listen." That night, back in her village, Mina sat by the fire, telling a story to a group of children. She drew circles in the dirt and spoke of how stars are born, not with noise, but with stillness. She told them how even a tiny seed knows the shape of the sky, and how sometimes the smallest voice can carry the biggest truth. The stars above twinkled softly. And in a galaxy full of machines, ships, and noise, a simple woman's quiet wisdom had become the most powerful light of all. Years passed. The galaxy changed in many ways. Cities became more peaceful. Machines began to follow rhythms of nature. Big leaders and scientists started asking simpler questions, not just how fast, but how kind, how balanced. And at the center of this quiet change was Mina. She never wore medals. She never asked for statues. But her thoughts had become part of every world's learning. Children studied her teachings. Space travelers carried her patterns on their ships. Even rulers used her ideas before making big decisions. Still, Mina stayed the same. She chose to live in her village, near the forest and the river, where she found peace. One cool morning, Mina sat under her favorite tree. She was making tea with fresh herbs when Nomi arrived. Nomi was older now, her steps slower, but her eyes still bright. "I have news," she said, sitting beside Mina. "The Galactic History Board has declared your story the most important lesson of this century." Mina raised her eyebrows gently. "My story?" Yes, Nomi smiled. The day you solved that equation, the day you made everyone see with new eyes, it changed everything. Mina stirred her tea and said, it was not just the equation, it was the joke. If they had not laughed, I would not have tried. Nomi laughed softly. Then maybe the joke was a blessing. They both smiled, enjoying the quiet wind and the smell of warm tea. Later that week, a special group of young students visited the village. They came from many planets with green skin, golden eyes or soft robotic voices. But they all came to learn. MENA welcomed them with fresh bread and berries. She led them to a flat rock near the river and said, you don't need machines to understand the universe. Watch the water, listen to the birds, feel your breath. One young boy asked, but how can we build big things with just small thoughts? Mina replied, a mountain is made of small stones. Big things are only many small things working together. Another student, a girl with glowing hands, asked, how do we know if our answer is true? Mina smiled and touched the girl's hand. If your answer brings peace, if it helps without harm, then it is close to truth. The students listened carefully. None of them took notes. They only listened with open hearts. Months passed. Then one day, news arrived that a star in a nearby system had begun to collapse. It was a strange event, faster than usual, and scientists feared the star might create a dangerous wave. A council meeting was called, and the advisors asked for MENA. She traveled to the station quietly. Many of the council members were worried. The machines gave numbers, but the data didn't explain why the star was dying so fast. Mina stood before the screen and watched the star's light flicker. Then she asked, what lives near this star? A silence fell. Only mining colonies, one scientist replied. They use high-energy beams to break asteroids. Mina nodded slowly. Too much pulling, too much pressure. Even a star breaks when it's used without rest. They all stared at her. Pause the mining, she said calmly. Let the star breathe. Though unsure, the council followed her words. 3 days later, the star's light began to return to normal. The danger passed. Everyone looked at Mina in amazement. After this, her wisdom was no longer called strange. It was called necessary. Many leaders across the galaxy began inviting local thinkers, village minds, and silent observers into their councils, not just fast talkers and big builders. They finally understood what Mina had shown them. True intelligence includes calm, kindness, and connection to life. One evening, as the sun set behind her village hills, Mina sat with her granddaughter. The little girl had her eyes closed, breathing slowly. What are you thinking? Mina asked. I'm listening, the girl whispered. Like you taught me. The leaves say something, Mina smiled. Good, what do they say? They say, even when we are small, we are part of something big. Tears touched Mina's eyes. You will teach this to others one day, she said softly. The stars began to appear above them. Years later, after Mina's peaceful passing, the galaxy did not forget her. A great library was built, not of tall walls or machines, but a floating garden among the stars. It held no screens, no hard data. Only silence, flowing water, simple drawings, and spaces for people to sit and think. It was named the Mina Space of Quiet Wisdom. Anyone from any world could visit. They would leave behind fast thoughts and busy minds and learn to listen. Again, to earth, to sky, to each other. And so the woman who once solved an impossible equation as a joke became the galaxy's most treasured teacher. Not because she shouted loud, not because she had power, but because she reminded everyone of something they had forgotten. That brilliance can grow in silence, that peace can be the strongest truth, and that even the simplest heart can hold the wisdom of stars.